That's fine. So why don't you just skip down to the third page, why increase, basically, last increase was back in 2016, so it's been over 9 years. So unfortunately, rates have not gone up that much, and we probably over increased a little bit. So it's now kind of caught up. And one of the issues is that a wholesale supplier means budget year is different from clients, so we don't know what their rates will be until the January timeframe. And so we just got their new rates in January, and they're significantly increased. And it's my goal to hopefully convince you. I'm at that point now where I want to come back to the talk about time of use rates. And I've gone through all the various committees, and that's taken forever. But because people don't have they don't meet 1 month, and then they don't have time for me. But anyways, I've made it through, and so I'm ready to come through and talk at this point in time. What I'd like to do, hopefully, if you agree, it's in the budget, but I'd like to expend the funds in order to update the Excel and census systems. But first, I got to convince you that we need to go there. And one of the things I want to do is come with this rate increase before we talk about time of use, because I don't want to conflate or confuse people with rate increase and time of use at the same time. Some of that was happening with the Economic Vitality Committee. And that's one of the reasons I want to do this rate increase. I'm going to actually propose some changes to our rate structure that are separate from time of use that you'll see shortly. So anyways, basically with the increases that means is implementing, starting mainly in April 1st, there's some WAPA, changes. We get some small allocation for WAPA hydro, and those rates went up also, but really the main increase has to do with means rates. So if you can see there, we're almost $73,000, and the way the budget went this past year, it was kind of even. Actually, we're going to go go into the red a little bit on the budget for our capital projects. So I thought it would be best if we didn't go even further in the red. Okay, so here's our actual rates right now. And the main thing to understand, and where I'll be focusing on a lot, is the non-residential rates are different from the residential rates. And there we're talking about non-residential, think elementary school, think all the businesses, restaurants and stuff like that, and all the commercial, properties. And so what they have is they have, if you have a higher usage in the month, over 5,000 kilowatt hours, you get a lower rate. And I'll explain what we're doing with that shortly. Next slide. Okay, so the proposed rate increase is basically to increase the residential rate 5%. So it'll go from 1275 up to 1339. And then probably one of the big changes for the non-residential and commercials is to make the non-residential rates match the residential rates. So everyone will be paying the same rate. And let's see.
And just
And then the third bullet there I have is increase the town rates to what we're actually paying mean at this point in time. A lot of times what happens is the town rates seem to lag behind what we're actually paying mean. So, the rest of the residentials, everyone, all the other customers subsidize the town's, electric usage at that point in time.
so is that supposed to be 0.07?
Yeah, we didn't get it corrected.
Just so someone doesn't think we're.
It's 7 cents.
It's 7 cents. Sorry, I did mess that one up.
Okay.
And someone pointed that out before, and that's probably the one thing I
Yeah, I
missed.
can tell they're gonna, increase it by that amount or.
And one of the things, going through all the briefings and so forth and the rates for time of use, I identified, that it probably makes sense to lower the base rates. It seems like we don't have to be that high. And basically that would offset some of the issues that are happening with time of use, increasing slightly some low income, rates. And so what I wanted to do was go ahead and do that right now. Although we had one person that think we should wait until we talk about time of use to do that. But other than that, it was unanimous to go through and recommend this change that we're doing right now. And then for the non-residential monthly base fee, we wanted to lower that again to match what the residents, make everyone pay the same amount and not have these different rates. It doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, we do have some mainly commercial customers and also the school that have these high capacity meters, and that equipment and those electrical lines cost more. So we wanted to increase the rates for those high capacity meters. And basically double them, from 12 up to 24. And in this case, it would just increase it from $18 to $24 a month for the non-residential users. And then the low income stays the same at 20% off the regular rates or residential rates. So this is basically how it looks after you go and run all the calculations. And so you can see residential customers increase overall 3.4%, even though we're raising the rate up to 5% higher. The fact that we're reducing the base fee means the overall amount that residential customers pay will be less. So it'll only be 3.4%. Non-residentials are hit more, but mainly that's due to about 20 commercial customers that get a big rate decrease when they spend over 5,000 kilowatt hours a month. And so those rates will go up slightly. And then the town rate's probably the most. I don't think it's been changed for a couple of years, and we're being proactive this year by trying to get it up to what it should be. And so that's being raised 13.6%. And then, the net meters, they tend to not increase as much. And in some cases, like the commercial even goes down a little bit because the commercials aren't gonna be paying their, that high base rate anymore of 18 that drops down. So that's why commercial goes down a little bit. But overall, we're talking about a rate increase of only 4.7%, which is less than most of the other communities around here who have had to raise their electric rates over the last year. But this will bring us up and cover those additional mean costs that we have. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, you do that. Okay. So I want to talk about the justification for the lowering the non-residential or increasing the non-residential. Yeah, making them equal. Case for making them equal. That title didn't make sense. Okay. Basically, means or Lions wholesale costs are not reduced, when people use more electricity. So the fact that, we're giving a break means that everyone else has to pay those non-residential customers. They have to pay more than, in my mind, their fair share. Everyone should be paying the same rates, in my mind. And if you look at Mean, our wholesale supplier, they don't give a break for the large communities out there like Fort Morgan, who use, over 30 times as much energy as Lions. They don't get a break on lower rates. So, I don't know that we should do the same thing. And if you look at other communities out there, like Fort Collins, Loveland, they don't also give a break on their commercial customers don't produce or don't use that much electricity. And when I say that much, that's what our customers use. Our commercial customers aren't using that much, so we don't have really large industrial users that would warrant a lower rate. And one of the issues is, once you get larger customers, if they get a lower rate, that just allows them to be less energy efficient. And it's not as fair to the other customers. And if you look at the large commercial customers, they're still gonna benefit and have a lower rate relative to other people because if you look at their base fees relative to their energy use, it's still rather low. So they're still getting a benefit just being large. And then I put the case down there for the last bullet there, just increase for the high capacity meters, those cases, I do believe that they should be paying, more. So basically double it. Any questions?
All right, who would like to start?
I think there's a look at the UAB a little. Do you know any idea historically what the justification was for having lower rates for higher use? Was it like to make it attractive for high use businesses to move to Lyons, or does anybody know?
I mean, to some extent, they did put the base fee higher at the same time, right? So I think it was trying to balance. I remember some discussion when Mayor Sullivan was the mayor, but I don't remember exactly why. And that was already in place, but we had talked about changing it then to some extent. And again, I've seen others like Longmont also putting higher rates on them, so I'm not sure where that came from.
I mean, do some municipalities or private sector utilities charge more for higher use to incentivize energy conservation?
Yes, even Longmont's rates were higher for higher energy consumption.
And I think for residential customers, they increase it for, they have different tiers. And the more you use during the month, the more it goes up.
Yeah, it seems like what we have to me incentivize high energy users not to maximize their savings, not to switch to more energy efficient equipment and that sort of thing, because it doesn't make them that much money. They pay cheaper power than what they use, so.
Right.
So I had a similar question, if not almost exactly the same, which is why was there a difference in the first place historically?
And right, that's what we were saying. We don't know exactly why.
But it was like that in 2016, the last time you changed the.
Yeah.
It's always been like that. I think it did go back to trying to encourage businesses to.
I can't imagine another reason you would do that, except to try to encourage people to move into town. Businesses to move into town, right? Otherwise, it just don't make no sense.
Attorney Devon?
Yeah, I would only add in that historically that wasn't very uncommon, and you still see that to some extent in investor-owned utilities because you want to encourage large loads to relocate into your service territory, and also having a large load kind of balances out the load curve a bit versus having a bunch of individuals turning off and on. You have a steady large load; it helps solve that problem as well. So I would say historically, it wasn't uncommon to see. Especially larger customers have larger fixed charges and lower energy charges. However, as we recognize people are moving away from encouraging energy use, you're seeing some of that go away.
I have a question about the low income rate, which I'm really happy to see. You're recommending it remains at 20% below the residential rate. Can somebody define for me what you call the low income rate, and can somebody also explain how we communicate this to our low income residents?
Yeah, you know this?
No, not the
Okay.
rate where it's set.
We follow the HUD guidelines, and it's got a terrible title, Dolores. It's called Poverty Guidelines.
Poverty guidelines.
Poverty Guidelines for HUD. And it's different than what we think of as, you know, affordable housing and AMI. So it's very low income. It's as if you were saving nothing more than social security benefits. And people can apply. They fill a couple copies of their most recent state, you know, their proof of income. Very simple form, but it only applies to, what did we figure out? We said that there's about 20. Well,
No, there's more.
26,
Yeah, make it less than 30, yeah.
Right around
People-
30.
30, okay, people that are eligible right now.
Out of how many total?
Out of 1,000 customers. Yeah, I don't know the residential split. I'd have to figure, but.
No, it's very low. People inquire. And those change every year, just like we get guidelines for housing. It changes.
So that's what I recommended to a resident earlier today, was to call town hall
Huh.
and ask if they met the requirements. I didn't know what the requirements were, but I assumed.
We use 150% of the HUD guidelines.
Okay,
And then they just need to bring in like their social security award letter or whatever
Yeah.
it is. As long as it's under those guidelines, they qualify for it, and then 20% across.
yeah, I don't know how we can get the message out, maybe in a town e-blast, but I feel like it's good to remind residents that that is an option. And I don't, know if even at the bottom of the electric bill, maybe if you think that you might be low income, feel free to contact us at town
Yeah,
hall.
I think we did put in the last newsletter.
Did we?
Yeah, yeah, but we can do it every few months.
And I'm curious how these proposed rates compare with our neighboring communities and what they pay, with ratepayers pay.
Actually, I was surprised that we're very close to, you know, Loveland's. You know, Loveland, or not Loveland, Fort Collins has a base fee just under $12. So we bring our base fee kind of down to where Fort Collins is right now. And our rates are getting comparable actually at this point in time. You know, we're not raising our rates as much as, you know, some of these other communities are doing at this point in time. We just had a bond that went off, and that's saving us, you know, 100,000 a year. You know, so there are things happening that we're able to keep things, you know, good. I think, you know, relative to other communities, we're doing pretty good right now, at least as far as electric goes. Wastewater, probably really high, water up there.
Yeah, if I may add, I'm not sure if the EV chargers we see in each municipality follow the municipal electric rates. But I know that my husband has specifically told our youngest to charge at Niwot High School when he's at school, because their kilowatt hour rate is 9 cents. So does that mean that Niwot's electric rate is 9 cents per kilowatt hour? I mean, I feel like that's the only other one I know of because of the EV charging rate, and I assumed that followed the municipal rate.
It would depend on who owns the EV. So even
Yeah, the
our
school
EV
district.
going in
Yeah,
is not gonna be our own. We're not gonna charge a rate, right? The Jewel EV is gonna be owned by Jewel and they will charge the
Ah.
rate. So it depends, one, if it's a
Okay.
municipal or not. And I'm not sure where we set our rate for the current EV that we have. That was done a while back and have not looked at increasing it.
so, for example, if the school district were supplying EV chargers at every school, there are 2 here in Lyons, one at the elementary school, one at middle senior. What you're saying is the school district would have a separate rate at those EV chargers than what we have around, like at the library. For somebody asked me once, what was the, you know, the rate at the library, and I couldn't tell them. I have no idea how I would find out what the charging rate is at the library. I mean, so it sounds to me like there would be one rate at the school, there would be one rate at the library, and there'd be a different one when we install these EV chargers near Sandstone. Is that right?
Yes, I heard it was free at the library.
Yeah, it's free at the library.
It's free?
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
that they
wow.
want us to say
Well,
that, but it's a workshop.
Say that.
You know where we can contact.
We need to start advertising that.
Attorney Devon?
Yeah, Trustee Dottie, just so you understand, I mean, those rates are set by the owner of the charger, not the town, or the electric provider in Niwot's case, which is not the town. And so, I mean, as a library demonstration, you know, they can make it free if they want to. They can also make it exorbitantly expensive if they want to, like just like a gas station can. Everyone's seeking to recover their costs, but there's nothing in our rates that dictate what that looks like other than our own owned facilities. And again, we have discretion on how to set those as well.
So it's possible that the St. Marie Valley School District is subsidizing the cost of electric charging at their schools.
It's possible. Yeah, it's very possible.
Thank you.
So at Lyons Elementary, it's only 10 cents per kilowatt hour.
Ha. All right. That's so interesting. 9 cents at Niwot, but 10 cents at Lyons.
So Jim, if, Jim, Aaron, Victoria, Cassie, anybody, if we decide to move forward with changing the rates, how long would that take and what does that cost in terms of staff time and updating systems?
Just changing this rate versus the time of use. The time of use is much bigger, but just changing this rate is 2 readings of an ordinance in 30 days, or a reading, public hearing, second reading, 30 days from that time. So if we put it on the next agenda, it could legally be implemented in, it'd be 2 months time. And really the change is nothing, is going in and just updating the rates. In this case, the only changes are actual numbers. The base rate dropped 13 to 12, changed that up.
Attorney Devon?
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, electric rate increases do have very specialized notice requirements. And so I'm not sure whether we could get it on the next agenda, but I think Aaron's right. Once it's, on first reading, the time frame's right. But there's a very special process we have to follow for electric rate increases in terms of notice. So I just want to make sure we're all aware of that, and that may extend out the time frame. Not very much, but maybe a week or 2.
That reminds me of something. If you look on your kind of Lyons electric bill, soon to be all digital, not paper, or mostly, there's a line on there that says electric rate surcharge. That was on there after the flood. We did some repairs and stuff, and for a while there was a surcharge and it went away. But that line on the electric bill is still there, and it has occasionally caused some confusion if people would say, I'm getting surcharged for electric. And so, but it's, even though it's 0 on there, if you're making these changes to change the base rates and the usage rates, we get rid of that line, just to eliminate that confusion. It's come up several times. Some people swear they're still getting surcharged, but they're not.
Yeah, and anything else, if we're going in there, anything else that you all feel needs to be cleaned up in some way?
Aaron had a line in the Lyons Municipal Code that he thought needed to be fixed up, but that'll come back at the ordinance change, I think.
Our code has one simple line that says you will only have 1 rate class. I don't know exactly what that, if that's even true now with the difference in commercial and non-commercial, but I thought we should remove that to be clear. We have, if we go with the second rate for the higher meters, the 3-phase and the other meters.
All right, any other questions about this topic before we move on? Trustee Hammer?
Yeah, I just kind of have a historical background question, but rates haven't been changed in 9 years. So I'm just trying to, I assume mean updates are rates yearly and they've been going up and we've just been absorbing that cost.
Right, they haven't been going up, and they were flat, and they actually went down for a year or 2. It's back in, I did present it, I think I can try to find it and send it out. Mean had their rate curve on there. They again dropped, went flat over the last, I don't remember if it was the same 9 years or not. It would have equaled out to about 2%, 1.8% per year, with this large increase for them of 9%, but ours hasn't. We did, when we raised rates the last time, we also included a plan to cover, was that me that dropped off?
No,
There was a plan to cover 100,000 per year for our new electric meter project. And when that finished at 300,000, we kept that on there to do other, say, $100,000 in undergrounding or whatever we wanted to do for that. So that's been on there. That got eaten into a little bit last year with their increase, but before last year was the first year in 5 years mean went up.
Okay, thank you.
That would have been the simpler one.
And then
All right.
actually, one more question for Jim. You mentioned the town rates, that the increase will get us closer to where we should be, and what is where we should be in your mind?
On my mind, it should be at least the actual mean cost. So the rest of the customers shouldn't be subsidizing the town, at least in my mind.
It would be,
Sure.
I would say, the wholesale rate, but
Right.
not the wholesale rate just for energy. So mean charges basically two rates. They have the charge for energy, which is
Right.
current 5 point something cents, and then they have their fixed cost monthly charge. So we should pay a portion of that fixed cost, which we have. It was actually just raised last year, but we were working on the year before when you and I talked about it. We did increase it to meet what we saw the year before. Now Jim's been working on things enough, he's projecting ahead, so we're jumping 2 years instead of one. We're not gonna use last year's rates, we're gonna use going forward for 2025.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Let's move on to our next topic, which is electric utility capital projects.
Gave me a prevent screen, but now it's not. Well, because you can't read that, right? So I wanted to start with the, I guess chose this arbitrarily, the Longmont Electric Service Territory discussion. Again, this would still be a project. We'd be taking over a portion of Longmont's service territory. We currently started with 10 different properties. What actually brought this back to the forefront was that we had 3 different developments that use Longmont power that were talking to us. The generator development across the street from our public works, which is currently in the process of trying to get utilities connected. The annexation of the Tebow property at the corner, 4545 U Highway, who would potentially be able to come on to the town electric once they annexed in, or actually, this is a separate agreement. We could make that now, but in general, it's when we annex property and we could take over their water, sewer, and electric. And then the other one was the building. You may remember that I believe we're leasing. I don't know if it's built into the lease, but the building behind Spirit Hounds that's on the town property. That in that agreement, it was mentioned that we would connect to town electric, which happens to be Longmont Electric. I had mentioned that, I think it got lost in the shuffle somewhere back at that time. It still just says we would pay, so we could end up just paying Longmont the cost of that, or we look at connecting it to the town, in which case we are and recouping the cost that we would put out eventually in the electric charge. I would also point out that 2 of these properties have town electric on them. One of them is our public works, the property with the public works itself. So we would start paying ourselves, the public works fund, general fund, wherever that comes from, would pay the electric fund instead of paying Longmont. And on the property just to the south of that, which is also generators development, but not being developed right now, we have our lift station and pressure reducing valve, and those also have Longmont Electric. So we would again switch to paying ourselves instead of Longmont Electric. Looking at the high end, this was really to try to get some perspective on whether we want to move forward or not. It's purely a financial decision. Is there a specific return on investment time frame that we're looking for? But for all 10 properties, they came out the first time with 125,000. Oh, I did add it up. This is actually 11 properties. There was one more property in there that I didn't realize. There's a small little property going back to the old Ideal cement plant that's included in this. But those would 125,000. And their way of determining that, after we looked at some of the previous information, was 25% of the past 10 years revenue, plus whatever it would cost Longmont to remove their equipment. They're on a different voltage than we are. We can't just use their equipment. We do have to put ours in. So That's another cost that we don't have yet. I had asked Enline to look at it. They haven't had a chance yet. I also have Mean has an engineering firm coming out next week. Want to talk to them a little bit. And I also, as a side note, probably want to bring back an RFP for engineering on call for electric specific, because our engineer, other water sewer engineers don't do electric. You need a special electric engineering company. So they could look at that in a much higher level if that's where we want to go. As I mentioned in here, around 60,000 of that is for the 5 properties to the east, which is what includes the generator development, where they would be coming in and we would basically have no cost to build out the new infrastructure, because they're a development, they have to pay for any new infrastructure they need. We have also in there is the Grace Design next to us. So as an example, that's an existing property. We couldn't easily just go tell them they have to pay Longmont's charges for us to take over their electric. We would have to accept that charge and look at how long it takes us to recoup that back. The annexation of the Tebow properties is a bit of a mix. They have current electric there. I believe we could negotiate it and say, you keep Longmont's electric until you're ready to come to the town. As we'll talk about in the executive session, they know that when they do, they would then pay for the infrastructure for Lions. So again, that's another one where we wouldn't have to pay for infrastructure. We would just be paying this fee. Any of the existing businesses, we still have to find out, if you want to know the total cost, what it will cost our infrastructure to go in once this gets removed and we switch to Lions.
So really, Erin, if I could just start for a second, the question that we're gonna be talking about tonight is more, do we want to move forward with finding out more versus are we making a decision about actually pursuing this?
Right, do we want to spend the money, I would say, really getting it going? And so if we want it, like, we do want to decide if we want, I think if you want to move forward, if you feel you need more information to move forward, then yes, we would want that information. If we thought there was enough to say, yes, we want to do this, we can move forward with the 1 property for generator development. They're not ready yet. They haven't submitted their forms. We said before that we were okay doing theirs. But again, if we do decide at some point, we know we don't want to take over Longmont, we should try to stop them before they get started if we're just waiting for them. And so if we know we want to move forward with this, we can start putting in the initial plans. We can basically let Tebow know what their costs are going to be, because we'll know that already from Longmont. We would know to move forward with the generator development. I think it's, do we want to move forward with the first 5, potentially wait on the second 5? I would split it up into 2. And so I would just put in there, if you hadn't seen it, some of the concerns on our capacity. And so that was there, showed that we could handle that. Then I just put some maps in there to show the property areas where we have the existing customers, longer customers. And there were the questions of, do we want to concern ourselves with what an individual customer will pay, what the change in rate would be to them? Or are we looking at, if it's better for the overall utility and the town of Lyons customers, then even if customers have to pay more, some of the individual customers, is that acceptable? Or is there a concern? Most of them will be paying more going to the town of Lyons. They have a higher base rate. So if any of those commercial customers currently use less than 2,000 kilowatt hours a month, that's about what the town uses. That's the break-even point. Less than that, they might save money going to Lyons. I would think all of them are probably over that, and so would pay more going to Lyons. So if that's a concern, that's something to take into consideration. So if you want more interest from that side, if there is a specific break-even point, I would say if we know we would make our money back in 5 years' time, is that enough to say, yes, let's move forward? Because after 5 years.
Well, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking for here is, what is the ROI? How long is it? I don't think that we can make a decision until we know that.
And so that's why I would ask, is it, what do you say it is? what should we be looking for as that cutoff?
Well, I think we just need to know what it is. I mean, it sort of, unless I'm mistaken, you know, you get to ROI when you get to it. There's
Like the
nothing.
break even,
Yeah,
is that what you're?
Is it 5
Here's
years?
the break even point.
yeah. What is the break even point for each property? I mean, that would
Well,
certainly,
wouldn't be each property
It'd be for the transition.
to grouping. If we try to do it individually, we can talk to them about that. It would be more expensive to try to go one at a time.
mhm.
And right, so I thought if I knew where there was, you know, if we're saying, well, if it's 10 years, forget it, it's not worth it. If it's 5 years, okay, it's worth pursuing, keep going. That would be the type of direction that I would say, okay, keep trying to do that.
Mark?
I did some very crude and probably incorrect math on this, but if we had 10 properties that came into the town and each of them, we change our rate structure, is paying $12 a month base rate. That would add $120 a month, $1,440 a year in more base fees to the electric. It costs us $125,000 to make that transition. That calculates to me to an 87-year payback. So if we're not gonna get payback through the base rates, where do we get payback from? We do, you know, I guess another way to look at it is how much profit, if you want to call it that, although we're nonprofit entity, do we make from the actual providing of the service? That's where your payback has to come from, because the base rates don't get you there. Right, unless my math's wrong, it could be.
No, I would. No, just the base rates wouldn't cover it.
You don't.
But you wouldn't just factor in the base
Right,
rates,
right.
you factor in all the costs. We have a markup on electric, you know, they don't pay our wholesale, you know, rates, energy rates, so.
And that's what I'm getting at. What's our markup, profit margin, whatever you want to call it? I don't know. I can't. That's beyond my skills to figure what the payback is for that. I guess it's based on the kilowatt hours that those, you know, businesses would.
If you kind of look back at the previous briefing that I had, I think we were raising town rates up to around a little over 8 cents a kilowatt hour. And our rates now are $12.75 and we're increasing them up to $13.39. So that difference, 5 cents a kilowatt hour.
Then there are also more costs to service more
Right.
properties, right?
And why is there a cost?
And right into that, there was a sentence in the memo that I didn't understand. It said, you first said that the substation out east is at 50% capacity, so that doesn't seem to be an issue. But you said the wires from the substation to town are around 70% capacity and will need an upgrade before the substation, and then there was a period. Would they need an upgrade because we added these 10 additional properties? Or are they gonna need an upgrade anyway?
No, at some point, if we get that large, we would. So I was trying to show we potentially could have 300 kilowatts or 3,000 kilowatt load, so that's a 10% increase. So adding this would potentially put us up at 80% of the capacity of the wires. So
Is there a trigger point there like there is with the wastewater, that you get over a certain amount of capacity, you gotta?
not specific, we would want to talk to the engineering firm about that too, where they would have concerns if they would say when and what the cost would be to upgrade those.
Trustee Willie, you have something?
Yeah, we often get accused from some quarters of saying that we're not business friendly. But what you're saying is if they transfer over to the Lions Electric, the cost to these customers is actually going to be greater. Am I clear on that?
Yeah.
So it's cheaper for them to stay with Longmont from a business aspect.
What was the kilowatt hours for that though? I mean, does change based on how much energy people are using, whether it's cheaper or not.
But most of these are industrial users that we're talking about. These are
Commercial. I wouldn't call them
high
industrial.
capacity users. These are commercial properties.
Right.
Right,
So what we don't know is there's an unknown additional charge for the old water plant, which has been decommissioned for 10 years. You noted that in your memo. So that's in addition to the 125K.
No, well, that's to try to reduce it down. That's in there already.
Okay,
If they dropped it potentially by $20,000, we'd be at $105,000. But you're still a long ways out to make the return on investment. They can't give out their kilowatt usage. They've told me they won't do that as their utility customers. So we could try to do an estimate of how many kilowatts in total they're gonna produce in a year, and that would then tell us at 5 cents per kilowatt, how much would we make in a year on that to add to Mark's 14,000 base fee.
And adding these 11 customers is going to affect our, line maintenance contract. Do we know by how much?
Right, we'd have to look at it, 5% maybe, probably not even that much. When we look at the total territory we have,
Sure.
these are, at least the ones out east would be all put in underground. The ones actually to the west, they're already connected basically right to the same line. Longmont is above Lions, so there's not too much there to change, and the actual area of coverage wouldn't be that great. So it would just be a matter of if something deteriorates, we'd be putting in newer infrastructure. In general, that should last much longer than a lot of the existing infrastructure in town. So it should be minimal.
So we've got about 15 minutes left. We've got a lot more to get through. So we're gonna talk about this later. And maybe we can, so hold your additional questions for that. So let's quickly go through the Broadway and Uwald projects.
So
and then we'll move on.
the Broadway project was one that we've had going on for a while. There was some discussion after we put in the conduit after the Broadway project or during the Broadway project, but it was a separate project. We were ready to go ahead and start connecting individual customers to the single phase underground system that is in place. One of the customers who specifically did talk about going to 3-phase, off again, on again. And then there was some other discussion on 3-phase. I've heard from one other customer right around the corner on 4th who's interested in 3-phase, but hasn't looked into it. It's not really available to him easily, I guess I should say. So then with some of the discussion on 3-phase, we held off connecting any of these businesses to the single phase, because if we connect them, we will have to disconnect them, put in a new transformer, and then reconnect them to that transformer. So we've already put in some work that would have to potentially be changed for the 3-phase, but we didn't want to move any further. So really, this one we were trying to get an understanding of, is the desire to try to move forward with the 3-phase power. You had the EVC's input. We've had, I believe, heard before the UEV's input, but the EVC said it sounded like a good idea, but they didn't know if anyone would really take advantage of it and was it truly worthwhile. The UEV doesn't really see it as something that improves or helps the electric fund, but in the end, they were okay with moving forward with it overall for the town. Again, we had the high level cost of $150,000 to do that. And then the individual businesses still need to spend their money to actually make the 3-phase connection. So the other discussion was, well, if we don't really think we have a high likelihood of people going to the 3-phase, would it be better served to try to somehow subsidize and help these current customers who we have already covered basically half the cost for them to underground their services by putting in the conduit? Should we go ahead and as a business incentive, should the town pay for the rest of their undergrounding of their services? Because until they do that, we can't remove the poles that are out there that are connecting their services.
Okay. Questions for Aaron about this?
Yeah, if the business is there right now, doesn't want 3-phase, but goes ahead and puts in their single phase service line now, and then they change their mind 5 years from now, or a new business moves in. Any idea of the approximate cost it would take to convert the single phase service line to a 3-phase service line in the future? I mean, I know there's inflation, but.
Right, I was using, say, $10,000.
So some business point on the lines that are needed to replace power, that would be something they would need to factor in as part of their cost of doing business, and that would be basically, they would need to redo the conduit because the single phase conduit wouldn't
Be big enough.
accommodate three-phase lines.
Correct.
And this is something that we'll be talking about later as well. So let's real quickly talk about the next project before we move on.
And the last one was then the discussion we had before about a possible undergrounding project for this year. And using the block of E-wall between Prospect and Miley, because the three property owners there were interested. Before they had all said they would do it, I just met with two of them and can confirm they were interested and willing to say to pay the cost of getting their service lines undergrounded, which is usually our biggest discussion when we're trying to do a block of the distribution line. This is at the end of one portion of where the service line, the distribution lines are run. It's also up relatively close to the open space that's to the west of Ewald there. It's not right up on the open space, as is the one block to the north. But one other talking point before was how this could potentially show some of the homeowners that, hey, if you want to get together and look at this, it's an option. It doesn't work everywhere. I don't think we're going to go to the middle of the system and do this, but for places that are at the end of an overhead system, those are usually the edges of town where we might have some additional fire concerns. So there was some desire of that. I had engineer Doles put together his estimate, high level scope, if we went out for an RFP to do the work ahead of time, the trenching and the conduit installation. We looked at 80,000. Talking to the homeowners, there are some concerns about even getting 2 feet deep there because we're into the rock shelf right up in that area. It definitely will be a little bit difficult because of that. Otherwise, it looked like an easier location. We wouldn't have to add a transformer. We could still run up. There's a transformer on the poles that run north-south on Prospect that we would leave, run the wire down the pole and then underground from there. We have all the services that are interested in it. And so from that perspective, it looked easier as a project, but we'll always have something come up. So I was looking at potentially it being 120,000. Now, we talked before 100,000 set aside for undergrounding. But going into the final part, I just added in there all of the budget that we have in the electric fund, trying to show, you know, where we were at with the projected fund balance. I should have put in what the fund balance in excess of reserves was. It is down in that table at the end, 485,000. And then we'll hear if that changes potentially in the future once the audit's done. And then putting in there, you know, looking at these 150,000 for the 3-phase installation, or possibly I just increased our number we had before of 50,000 to cover the businesses. If we didn't go with the 3-phase and you wanted to do something to incentivize, help the businesses get that undergrounded, plus 120,000 to underground the block of Ewald. And I did put those maps in if you.
So what are the other areas that we're looking at for undergrounding this year?
Those were the main two. I
Those are
haven't
the two, okay.
pulled out anything else. I try to work it with other projects we have.
Okay, any other questions right now about this?
What's the condition of those poles on Prospect? Are they older? I mean, are they showing signs of where they're gonna have to be replaced?
These would be the ones on, there's only 2 poles on Ewald, but I believe there's only 2 poles. It goes from Prospect to Miley on Ewald.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
The Ewald poles.
Yeah,
I don't see them as any older than any of the other poles in town, but they're all relatively old. We haven't had an actual pole. You can go out and test all your poles.
yeah. The only reason I ask is because you brought up the whole fire mitigation aspect of it. As I'm looking at the map here, it looks like those lines are a full house lot removed from the open space to the north, and from the west, they're a house lot removed from the open space. I don't know whether removing them for fire mitigation purposes would be a good point. maybe, but I just, if those poles went down, the wires went down, they're gonna come down in the street or on the lots, not on that brushy open space there.
Sparks fly too.
They do, yeah.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we would be responsible for $120,000 of this for the main distribution system. But what would the homeowners be responsible for?
Whatever their costs were, they were looking at that separately to have somebody come in and do the undergrounding and the trenching. And then I would have to still, as part of the quote for the electric portion that I put 40,000 for the town, and line would have to let us know what the cost is for the homeowners for their services.
Would be from taking the line from their roof to the pole right now, they'd go underground.
So do we have any idea what that costs
It
per?
would be similar to
The Broadway was 5,000 each
Okay.
line.
Is their concern aesthetics or is it fire? Those property owners you spoke to.
Fire.
Well, one of them is going to do their service line, he wants to do his service line. So he said he went out and talked to his other homeowners and said, hey, if you guys are interested, we'll underground and pay to get our service lines undergrounded. If you want to look at doing the distribution line. So that was the only reason we brought it up, was that it was an area where we actually could do that. And we already have buy-in from the property owners. Anywhere else we go to, you might have people just like on Broadway. No, I'm not gonna pay. I don't want to do it.
But do you know if it was aesthetics or wildfire?
Yeah, he wanted to do it. He's that one house at the end, he has to upgrade his service panel. So he wants to do it for that. The other homeowners, I think the one I heard did say he would like just to do it, so it sounded more aesthetic. And the third one, we didn't talk to it just last week.
Thank you. All right, we need to move on because we only have a couple minutes left and we need to discuss congressionally directed funding application and DOLA Energy Mineral Impact Fund application. And I want to start by saying that what I learned in DC was that number one, if Congresswoman Boebert is to be believed, she told us directly that any CDS funding that we've been told we're going to receive is quote dead on arrival. And there are varying opinions as to whether CDS is going to be available at all. Those who are in the know said you should still apply, definitely still apply. I met with Senator Bennett's legislative aide and he thinks that there is a good chance for the wastewater treatment plant to get funded. And the amount I told him was $3 million. And so I know staff has some information about both CDS and the Energy Mineral Impact Fund.
Yeah. And I think I can get through this pretty quickly. We can finish it during the discussion. So this was written like 10 days ago. So the mayor's information, at least from one congressperson, is different. But we attended a webinar that's hosted by both Bennett and Hickenlooper together. And they said that they are planning to accept applications. And they will take a joint application. So we can do one application, submit it to both of them. They did indicate as well that although, how did they state that? That both the House and the Senate have yet to confirm the availability of funding and eligibility for the process. However, this is a decision by the legislative branch, not the executive branch, so it is different than what some of the other things we've been hearing. So they did reiterate again to apply. We were told that they're looking for water quality type projects. And so that involves a lot. So the staff and I brainstormed and we came up with 4 projects that we think are all very critical to that could be considered for here in Lyons. The first one, of course, being the wastewater treatment facility improvements, which then the mayor confirmed in person that they would be interested in. They want very specific applications. So we would submit upgraded blowers, the dewatering system, and an upgraded ultraviolet disinfection system, if we want to go with that one. The second project we came up with, because we have absolutely no funding for it, is the sandstone culvert that runs through town. And making a case for it being historic, affecting our economy. Because it runs directly under the businesses and the water goes directly back into the river without any quality controls. So that's the second one that could be considered. The third one we came up with was what was submitted this past year, but didn't make it through. And that was several different sewer projects throughout town for upgrading sewer lines in Old Town, upgrades to 2 or 3 different lift stations, and adding a lift station as well. So that's another one that could be submitted. And then we've been hearing, of course, about an interest in replacing the Apple Valley water line. So that could also be something else. But when we look at what is most, the words they used, critical and significant for the community, we'd say the wastewater treatment plant is something we should submit for the March 24th round, if we can get the board's blessing on that. And then they also want us to submit for next year, and I'm not sure why, but I guess they're trying to get their ducks in a row. Is there a second project we could work on for the other submittal? So that's, any questions on these, or more information you want to be able to make a decision on?
I just
We
want
have
to,
7 days to get this in.
I want to add that when we think about whether we should submit for a second, it's important to submit projects that are approach shovel ready.
Yeah, and the sandstone culvert, as you know, they're inspecting now, we'll have a report. So I think that would be a nice project for next year, since we have no funding.
Well, that was my question actually, was regarding the culvert. Do you think the culvert could hang on? Like, could it remain, could it keep its integrity until 2026?
They're supposed to be giving us some options too, I think, on how
Right,
to
it's been that way
reinforce
for 10
areas.
years, maybe 20,
Okay,
so
okay, so
So-
it can hang on another
it
year.
should.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know.
We don't
We don't
know,
Knock on wood.
nobody knows.
There'd be another 5 minutes.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
knows? So the staff recommendation on this one would be to submit wastewater treatment facility improvements for March 24th. And then sandstone stormwater for the 26th round when we have a little more information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the wastewater treatment include the odor control?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that should be there. Sorry, I should have added that one. Yeah, we can be very specific. We don't want it to be so big it puts us competing with the really big cities, but rather enough left over that to them, $2 or $3 million is not like the things the big cities are spending. So it's a nice fill-in.
Question about the timing, because if I understand read right,
Mhm.
the funding bill they just passed with all the controversy was for 6 months. And it did not, if I read right, include any congressionally directed spending in
Does
that.
not.
So the next time that this will perhaps become an issue at the federal level will be when that 6 months expires and they see whatever.
If there's a new spending bill, but the deadlines remain the same.
Okay.
So that's why they're asking to submit both.
We
So,
will potentially know September, October, whether they're.
Yeah.
The next round of funding includes any congressionally directed spending.
Yeah.
yes, and then we will continue down the path with the wastewater plant, but this, at least if it would come, could fund a portion of it. All right, so that's one for just direction for us to get. The other is more of a verbal. We were notified by DOLA, who oversees the energy impact assistance funds, which are severance funds from energy and mineral severance taxes throughout the state. They have announced that they're reducing their cycle of grant funding to $15 million for 2025. And so they're expecting it to be quite competitive. And that they're on a different cycle because they're on the state fiscal year. And so this current cycle will close on April first if we want to submit anything, and they do it in 2 tiers. Tier 1 is up to 200,000 in projects, and tier 2 is between 200,000 and 1 million. So question number 1, staff would like direction is, do you want us to submit anything for the April 1st cycle? The next cycle will open September of 25 and March of 26, and they are expecting those to be, I think it's only a total of 21 million next year or something to that effect. So,
And what projects is Jeff wanting to know?
um,
Any of these?
it could be these, it could be stormwater. They're much more open. They like something of a community benefit. There is a 20% match.
Okay.
So it's whether or not, we want to try to get something put together for April 1st, knowing that it is going to be a tight first cycle. Or try to get something ready for September of 25 and can resubmit that March of 26.
What's the criteria for that award?
That award is really, our project manager, Chris LeMay, he reviews all of your ideas and helps you to identify which ones he thinks will be most successful. Usually it's things like fire trucks and libraries and community buildings and town halls. It's stuff that small rural communities that have energy, mineral, and in our case, it's chlorine, severance tax dollars. It just said, municipalities, counties, school districts, special districts have to contact their regional manager to determine.
I just wonder if you have anything already preloaded. I mean, it's a pretty tight schedule.
Yeah, the wastewater treatment facility is the one we have the biggest handle on.
Got $1 million cap.
Yep.
You just pick one.
One piece of it,
Every
sure.
little bit helps.
Or maybe the culvert for them might be something interesting, I don't know. We would go to him, but it's just getting, do we want to pursue, you want me to call him and see if any of these have an interest to them?
They're into buildings and that kind of stuff. Seems like the culvert because.
And it
historic
might,
stuff
the
might-
historic piece too.
Might. And I
They might
gather, I
like
gather
it.
for this, you need something that's gonna stand out from the crowd probably.
Send them some pictures.
Well, and it's kind of neat because it was built out of quarry materials.
Yeah.
And it lasted over 120 years and it needs repaired. So that might be something. I would run these 4 projects by them and see which one you might have an interest in.
Well, and that's on discussion direction later too, so we can talk about it more. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's take a break for a couple of minutes and then we're gonna start the regular meeting, go into executive session. If the board agrees, and then aim for starting our regular agenda at 7.
I did send out another link for the executive session, so you might want to check your junk folder.
I saw Dolores. What is a couple minutes? Is that 6:40?
Five. Yeah, let's go 6:40.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's call the meeting to order. Tanya will join us. I would like to call the Monday, March 17th, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Williams, Trustee Hamrick. I will note that he is in attendance. He may be on that other link already, but
Okay.
he is noted for in attendance.
Okay.
Trustee Dottie. I will also note that she is in attendance and not at the dais yet. Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Browning,
President.
and Trustee Dillman.
Present.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into
Executive session being conducted pursuant to CRS sections 24(6)(402) and 24(6)(402) determine positions relevant to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, instruct negotiators, and specifically determining negotiating positions and strategies regarding the table annexation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call for the vote.
Trustee Hamrick, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, I'll start that other link now.